It's a fact. Okay, thanks for letting me know. How perceptions about basic needs affect subjective well-being of Armenians, especially after 44-day war. And why we come up with this topic, because I think most of you know about Caucasus Barometer that we conduct in Georgia and in Armenia with very broad topics and questions. And the data from Caucasus Barometer showed a massive change in priorities in Armenia, stating that, well, if from 2012 to 2019, top priorities for the country were unemployment, wages, corruption, and these kind of issues. After 2020 war, these issues shifted to political, border-related, conflict-related issues. And the data showed actually that 61% of Armenians were extremely worried about their and their families' physical safety. 68% of them were uncertain about their and their families' future. 51% of respondents stated that they are extremely worried about their and their families' income and basically the future. And another study conducted by Association of Armenian Psychologists just revealed that after war, more than 60% of population was in moderate or high level of distress because of the conflict and the war over Nagorno-Karabakh. And with this study, we actually try to explore how this shift of priorities from unemployment, from corruption to conflict-related issues affected Armenians' well-being as well, subjective well-being. So just to define what is subjective well-being before moving forward, it is described as cognitive and affective evaluation used by people to show how satisfied they are with their lives. And in a World Value Survey data as well, people were measuring their own self-being and just understanding and answering to the question how they perceive their own subjective well-being. There is actually broad literature on subjective well-being, and how subjective well-being is being defined. It's quite broad, and a number of factors actually affect subjective well-being of people. It's personal safety, it's income, sense of community, and quite a lot of factors. For our study, we took collective security, personal safety, future worries, community connectedness, and financial well-being for measuring how these factors would affect people's subjective well-being. And we used Maslow's hierarchy theory just to understand the frame and to have theoretical framework to analyze all the factors we mentioned that would potentially affect people's subjective well-being. As you know, like the bottom line is psychological, and then it's coming biological needs of people that needs to be satisfied. Then it's coming social, love, esteem, and self-actualization. Quite interestingly, in poorer countries, safety, security, and psychological needs are being satisfied, and then people have higher level of subjective well-being. However, in richer countries, the higher the esteem is for the country, for the people, the higher is subjective well-being of the population. So it was very interesting, and also taking into account the war that we encountered, we also measured some coping strategies that people would develop over the years because the conflict was ongoing. And we just had an assumption that maybe thank you. Hope they heard me. I didn't spoke in vain.
You can do.
Repeat. Oh, okay, so I will continue.
Sure.
Yes. And we had the assumption that since the conflict was ongoing, maybe people would develop some coping strategies and mechanisms how they are living in this situation. So those were our assumptions and theoretical frameworks that we considered while doing the analysis. We had this hypothesis for our study. The first one, null hypothesis, was safety and security has no effect on subjective well-being of Armenian population after the 44-day war. The first one is safety and security perceptions affect negatively the subjective well-being of Armenian population after 44-day war. Another null hypothesis was factors other than safety and security does not affect subjective well-being of Armenian population after 44-day war. And hypothesis 2 was factors other than safety and security affect positively the subjective well-being of Armenian population after 44-day war. So as I stated, we had 5 independent variables, which were collective security, personal safety, financial well-being, future worries, community connectedness. We had a dependent variable, which was subjective well-being. Some of the control variables were age, marital status, gender, educational level. And just we built, the model is built using exploratory factor analysis. We build a factor analysis with independent variables, and then we run binomial logistic regression analysis to test our hypothesis and to find, to see what were the results of the study. And to determine the number of factors to be used, we use parallel analysis. So not going deep into the analysis, I will just present the results of the analysis here, which show that only 2 factors have significant effect of subjective well-being of Armenians, regardless of how it has been operationalized, which were community connectedness and respondents' financial perceptions. The results of the study didn't show any evidence that factors affecting subjective or well-being of Armenians has been shifted because of safety and security issues. And as we stated earlier, some of the possible explanations could be the coping mechanisms and coping strategies that people living in war-affected zones and war-affected communities, regions usually have, because the war and the situation was ongoing. They try and they have the mechanisms, they have the capacity to live through the conflict, to live through the war. They continue to operationalize their everyday life. They continue to have their usual work style while being affected because of the war. So our group, my team, we thought that it would be very interesting to elaborate more and conduct more qualitative data analysis to just understand psychological aspects of this issue as well, just psychologically understand how long-term, long-lasting and ongoing conflicts, wars affect subjective well-being and overall the psychology of people living in that territories, because this topic is, unfortunately, at least in Armenia, is under-researched, is not that much researched. And I do hope that with CRRC-Armenia we will explore this part as well. And I just to mention that all analysis, all the work has been done thanks to my colleagues as well, Mane Gasparyan, Khlghatyan, and Louis-Alassane Cassaignard-Viaud. So all we were from CRRC-Armenia. I think this all the conclusions I already mentioned, like we did factor analysis, then we ran regression analysis. We find that community connectedness and financial situation affect subjective well-being of people. And we come up to the conclusion that there is a need to do further research to investigate possible consequences of collective trauma that the societies encounter while being in war. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this interesting presentation. Me personally, as psychologist, we are too much interested in your topic. So thank you so much again. Our next presenter is Elene Kvanchilashvili, professor from Tbilisi State University. Also very interesting topic with the name, The Political Psychology of Euro-Integration, Which Values Matter.
Thank you so much. Let me just 2 minutes for setup here. I was in the different rooms, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Already
Same here. And I will check my you have your own selection.
No, very much suffering.
It's A or focus.
Recording in progress.
Չոլվրոտ մետավաշերս կրենքա։ Okay. Okay, sorry. I was in the wrong room, so joined a little bit later. So can you hear my voice? Can I start? Yes? Okay. So my name is Elene Kvanchilashvili, and I will be talking about the political psychology of Euro integration and which values matter. Somehow it's not moving, right? What's wrong with presentation? Yes, thank you. So I will give you a short introduction of what triggered my interest. Then I will show you the world cultural map and where Georgia is, and I will show a little bit of how Georgia has changed its positions from time to time and what affected its positions on the world cultural map. And then I will talk a little bit about some of the some of the findings, what might be the main the main factors that shape this trajectory of Georgia on the world cultural map, and then hopefully we will have some discussion. This is the photo. This is a no to Russian law. It says this was March events that triggered my interest. It was protests against the proposed foreign agents law that people, and especially young people, and this is really important, Gen Z, they said that it was reminiscent of a Russian measure used to silence critics. And this was really interesting because you could see people who would not hit the streets because of soaring prices, because of economy, the subjects that have been very acute subjects and main national problems and challenges for these people, but they would hit the streets because of the values and when they saw the threat to their values. Then I thought, how would political psychology try to explain this whole process of Euro integration? And what I found is that social psychology and cross-cultural psychology are quite in-depth. They deal with different parts, with belonging, with otherness, how culture shapes these values, but all comes down to the European identity. And this European identity is not linked with the Euro integration process through political psychology. So I agree with Ian Manners, who wrote in Political Psychology, that given that marking inside and outside, interior and exterior, belonging and otherness are both political and psychological processes, this absence of engagement seems problematic, and it seems indeed. And then I started thinking what could bridge, what could fill in to this absence. And I thought that political culture is in investigating political culture is the best way to do this, because political culture is a set of shared views and normative judgments held by a population regarding its political system. And what is important is that this is not views or beliefs that are connected to like individual politicians, but rather the whole system, how the political system works. So in this case, the building blocks of political culture could be beliefs, opinions, emotions of citizens towards their form of government. And that seemed logical to see how that evolves on this cultural map and in the World Values Survey. And my third trigger was World Values Survey's 6th and 7th waves themselves, because this was the first time when, with the traditional monitoring of cultural values, otherness, education, health, all the issues that have been in all the other waves as well, in addition to this 6th and 7th questionnaire, has elaborated with the inclusion of such new topics as the issues of justice, moral principles, corruption, accountability and risk, migration, national security, and global governance. Everything that fits into the political culture and everything that could be perceived through the lenses of political psychology rather than social psychology or cross-cultural psychology. So this is the the map, the most recent map, and what this map suggests is that there are like two axes: traditional secular rational values and survival versus self-expression values. And what Engelhardt and Welzel said is that following an increase in standards of living, and then this transition from industrialization to post-industrialization knowledge society, a country tends to move diagonally in the direction from lower left corner poor to the upper right corner, indicating a transit in both dimensions. So basically what we see on this picture is that those countries who tend to embrace more secular rational values and tend to embrace more self-expression values, they are actually better off. And this is the aspiration of Georgia's Euro integration as well, to be in that league, to play in that league. What could be some of the expectations from this picture is that Georgia would be more open to embrace emancipative values than secular values, and I will dig deeper into this. And then current, but not only current, but immediate economic situation impacts Georgia's diagonal move. So we could anticipate that this is not just a linear correlation there, but it is rather reciprocal, how economy affects the way countries are, and Georgia is positioned on the map. This is a map which is like 2005-2022. So this will be the map that I will be analyzing in case of Georgia. So what do traditional values mean, and what do survival values mean? And you are seeing the factor loadings here. For traditional values, it means that God is very important in respondent's life. Where autonomy index goes is important. Abortion is never justifiable. Respondent has strong sense of national pride and favors more respect for authority. And for the survival values, they emphasize priority to economic and physical security over self-expression and quality of life. Respondent describes self as not very happy. Homosexuality is never justifiable. Respondent has not and would not sign a petition, and you have to be very careful about trusting people. So the first inclination was to see how Georgia does on all of this, and this is the picture. So Georgia is really tilted towards traditional values, and it is still in the area of survival values. And you can see that God is very important. Abortion is so everything, all the factor loadings are there. Then my next question was, what are some of the problems and aims, some of the challenges and aims that this society sees, and what are some of the most serious worries that leave us in this survival area, right? So here you can see that globally it's people living in poverty and need, and locally it's high level of economic growth and a stable economy. And then in the most serious worries, you see a war involving my country, a civil war, losing my job or not finding a job, and then government wiretapping or reading my email or mail. What is important here is this shift that that takes place, right? So this shift from materialist to post-materialist values, and material values, they are basically based on traditional values, and then post-materialistic values, they are more based on self-expression values, right? So if you, in Georgia's case, if you look at this indexes, you will find something that I did not anticipate when analyzing this map in the first place, and this is how much mixed, like the area, the largest area is mixed. I mean, here. This shows when you run a little bit of operational code, you see that on the philosophical beliefs level, you know, confidence in democracy is really important. Confidence in churches, confidence in the EU, confidence in politics, right? But then when you look at onto the operational or instrumental beliefs, I mean, what are some of the instruments that these people use to meet their philosophical beliefs? You will see, you will clearly see a mix there, right? Because like people who believe that democracy is really important, they also and that is my favorite finding, they also believe that they need a strong leader who does not have to bother with parliament and elections. However, they don't have to obey this leader, right? So it's a total mix, right? When you look at a philosophical level and when you look at the instrumental level. And confidence in politics is low, quite low. It's 38.7%, and then it is quite logical, right? That political action does not follow, and people say that they would never attend peaceful demonstrations and they would never join strikes. Confidence in churches is really interesting as well, and here you see this clash between traditional values and secular values very clearly. Although people have really high confidence in churches, when asked on the instrumental beliefs level, are you a member of any church or religious organization? They say no. Do you attend systematically attend religious services? And the highest dispersion that you get there is that only on special holidays. And then confidence in the EU, and this is also very interesting. What you see on this and it was the recent study, IRI study. This is also 2022 or 2021 study. And when Georgians are asked, when you think about European values, which values comes to your mind first? And they say, you know, freedom, developed economy, democracy, protection of human rights, education, the rule of law. And when you think about Georgian values, which values come to the mind first? And they say Georgian traditions, hospitality, all of this, which stems from the traditional values, right? So so that is also interesting. What Engelhardt and Welzel were saying is that in modern societies, a silent revolution is taking place in which dominance of materialist values is being replaced by post-materialist values. And this value change is caused by the continuous replacement of old generation by new ones. And you can see this. This is actually the latest NDI CRRC polls that I brought, and you can see there the most how to say, the most vivid example is that younger people are more supportive of cutting economic ties with Russia, right? So that shows you how that clash, how that replacement and that new generation, Gen Z or whoever they are, they bring. And that was my first photo as well. And then I found this very interesting article in the Political Psychology. It is written in 1907, and the main finding of it was that both conservatism and hierarchy values were more important on average in Bulgaria, Georgia, and Russia than in Central Europe. And the authors of this article said that this provided further support for the hypothesis that adaptation to communism promotes these two types of values. Adaptation of communism could be viewed as one of the reasons why these traditional values and why the survival values stick so hard. And on the other hand, egalitarianism, intellectual autonomy, and mastery values were more important on average in Central Europe than in Bulgaria, Georgia, and Russia. And this evidence authors found was supported the hypothesis that adaptation to communism undermines these types of values. And you can see the same pattern in World Values Survey today, because traditional values, they focus on religion, traditional family values, authority, and they have negative attitudes towards divorce, abortion, euthanasia, and suicide. And then there are emancipative values where there's high priority for environmental protection, growing tolerance towards minorities, gender equality, growing need for active participation in economic and political life. And you can see that on the traditional values, I mean, everything is clear for Georgia in this research, but on emancipative values, you can see that Georgia is doing very well, and you can also see this mixed clashes in some of the parts, and some of the parts, and the main part of it is political action. And if you remember what the confidence in politics was in the other slide, that explains it. And then the second point is that immediate economic situation impacts Georgia's diagonal move. I will be fast here. Yes. Sorry. This is actually from 1997 to plus 4 years. And you can see where Georgia is, right? To 2005, 1997, 2004. This is this period. And you see where Georgia is, right? It is more tilted to secular rational values, and it is more tilted to self-expression values. And this is the period when Georgians see the perspective, right? I mean, they are out of the civil war, and then they are into this transition period of the Rose Revolution, and then happens the war, and this is 2009, 2013. Then happens the war and the global financial crisis, and you can see where Georgia comes down, right? It is now closer to traditional values and to survival values. And then this is 2020, this is pandemic, and you can also see that this continues, right? It is even closer to traditional values and survival values. And you can see this this is also in the CRRC, and you can see this in and not just 1 year, but for 5 years among the main national concerns and main national challenges. Economy on every level is persistent. So overall secular values mean is 0.28, and then overall emancipative values 0.35, and you see Georgia is doing better on emancipative values. This is, I don't know if I can turn it, but no, I wanted to show you how Georgia was doing, but I don't know if we can do this. If I can do this, you can see you can see Georgia moving in that in that little time period, and you can see how it involves. But what is important is that during this whole Euro integration, and if you look at European Union values, they are all about self-expression, and they are all about secular rational values, right? So it is, and if you look at those 12 points that Georgia received, is gaining and increasing this confidence in politics, and how Georgians view their political system in general and governing. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the very interesting presentation. So it is expected the changing of values are a reversible process. Thank you so much again. Our next presenter is Ulkar Asgarova from Azerbaijan University of Languages. And the presentation's name is The Impact of Ukraine-Russia and Armenian-Azerbaijan Conflicts on Azerbaijan's Own Identity Formation.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. I will share my presentation, but I don't have much to share. Just
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you are already co-host, so you can share your presentation. Your voice is listening very good.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the impact of the Ukraine-Russia and Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict on Azerbaijan's own identity formation. I will talk about like introduction, a brief introduction to the topic, and relevance to Azerbaijan identity formation, historical and geopolitical context of the topic, then impact on Azerbaijan's identity formation of this geopolitical and historical context, and some case studies and examples. So, okay, I can stop the presentation as 1 second. Okay, so I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, we can't see the presentation. Maybe you switch off the sharing function.
I think yes, but I'm sorry for this. Sorry. 1 second.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, yeah, I switched this off because I don't have much to share. I mean, in like statistical things or facts and so on. The intersection of culture, values, and identity is a complex and multifaceted issue that impacts societies in different ways, including during conflicts. In the context of Ukraine-Russia and Armenia-Azerbaijan conflicts, the cultural, social, and historical roots are intertwined. So, in this presentation, I will try to examine the role of cultural and historical narratives in the shaping Azerbaijani attitudes towards this conflicts, Ukraine-Russia and Armenian-Azerbaijan conflicts, and by focusing on how this narrative has contributed to the shaping of Azerbaijan's national identity. This is an ongoing research, so I have a paper, but I would like to make it. To make more interviews and surveys in order to get enough data. then in this paper, I will examine the ways in which these conflicts have impacted Azerbaijan civil society, media, and other actors, and the role of civil society has played in promoting a particular vision of Azerbaijan identity. So one key aspect of the presentation of this topic is an examination of how the conflict have led to change in the use of perception of Azerbaijan language. For instance, how the conflict have affected attitudes toward the language among the different segments of Azerbaijan society, in the rural areas, regions, and in the cities, and especially in capital city Baku. So we can say that the conflict, both conflicts and war, has had a significant impact on the formation of national identity and language policy in the country. Azerbaijan's identity has been shaped by a multitude of factors, starting from the collapse of Soviet Union, and this including historical and cultural and geopolitical influence. So firstly, Azerbaijan shares cultural and historical ties with Ukraine, particularly through shared Turkic roots and historical connections. And secondly, the other factor, the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh has had a direct impact on Azerbaijan identity formation. So in this study and in the further research, I'm planning to examine the cultural and historical links, and then explore the shared ethnicity and religious similarities between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and analyze how this conflict affected the perception of the identity, and also investigate the national security concerns arising from this conflict. And also their impact on Azerbaijan's self-perception. So the scope of the study is quite big. So I would like to shortly shed light on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So the conflict refers to ongoing tension and hostilities between Ukraine and Russia, and which is escalated in 2014 with Russia's annexation of Crimea and the subsequent conflict in the eastern Ukraine. The Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict centers around the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh, which has been a source of connection between the two countries for decades. And the conflict is escalated into a full-scale war in 2020, resulting with a significant loss of life and displacement of population from both sides. So geopolitical dynamics in South Caucasus region, influenced by both of these conflicts, play, of course, also a very significant role. So I would like to mention shortly how it shaped and how it influenced these aspects like national unity and solidarity. So Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has fostered a sense of national unity and solidarity also among Azerbaijanis. The conflict, seen as a threat to the country's territorial integrity, has brought people together and strengthened their identification with Azerbaijan as a nation. Then it also touched the historical narratives and cultural heritage because of some Albanian churches there. Azerbaijan is historical grievances and cultural heritage. Then language promotion is one of the most crucial parts of it. So impacted the promotion and revitalization of Azerbaijani language. So in response to the conflict, there has been an increased emphasis on importance of language as a symbol of national identity. Recognition of Azerbaijan culture and identity, again, starting from collapse of Soviet Union up to now. And I would like also to mention the diaspora engagement, which is also important. So the conflict has led to increased engagement and mobilization of Azerbaijan diaspora communities. And the engagement has contributed to the shaping of, again, identity, language formation, both within the country and also diaspora communities. So, while talking about focusing on language issue, so these post conflicts, especially the last conflicts, I don't mean the first Karabakh war, but the second Karabakh war, which started in 2020, and after Ukraine-Russia conflict, the war in Ukraine, have had a big impact on the use of the Russian language in Azerbaijan. I can say that the first Karabakh war didn't have that big impact, but these two conflicts they did it. But important to note that the extent of this impact vary among different segments of population and region, unfortunately. Some observations are that decline in Russian language, there has been a decline in the overall proficiency and usage of Russian language in Azerbaijan. It can contribute to various factors. The reorientation of geopolitical alliances and the decreasing significance of Russian as a lingua franca in region. However, in some higher segmentation of Azerbaijan community, especially in the capital Baku, we can still see the people who still talking in Russian and who wants their children also to speak Russian and to go to start like primary schools in Russian. So, but strengthening of Azerbaijan language is also another point that these conflicts have reinforced the importance of Azerbaijan language as a symbol of national identity, and people started to use it more and more in governmental and other spheres. So lots of efforts have been made to promote and prioritize the use of Azerbaijan language. In media, in administration, in education. Education reforms has been made, but again, and unfortunately, we have regional variation. So Russian language proficiency may still be relatively higher in Baku and in some higher segments of population compared to more rural and remote regions. There are some data surveys held by CRRC, Armenia, and Agora-Azerbaijan, which give a wide and much needed picture of public opinion about it. So generally public opinion is that people should speak Azerbaijani and there shouldn't be any Russian schools, I mean public and governmental Russian schools in Azerbaijan. And another another point is that people still, the young people, generally the young people polled also expressed concern about Russia as naming this country as security threat to Azerbaijan, that which is in the highest position in the survey, and as Russia, whose peacekeepers are stationed in Nagorno-Karabakh, was among the least popular countries among young and old population in Azerbaijan. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. You're also welcome to stay and participate in our Q&A session. Thank you again. And our last presenters are also our colleagues from CRRC-Armenia. History and challenges maybe regarding with CB.
Okay, sorry. Hello, so my name is Louis-Alassane. Today I will talk about Caucasus Barometer. Before I go any further, I would like to point out that this is very much a group work from my two colleagues, Mani and Hrachya, but also from everyone who's created CB data over the years. I actually haven't participated even once, so I'm very much tributary to that work. Why to do this? And I was joking that this is probably the worst crowd to do this to, because you probably all already know about CB. But here we go. In case you don't, CB is, there we go, representative survey conducted in Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan until 2013. Unfortunately, not since. It has been run since 2004, yearly until 2012, and then twice a year since. And I've been a bit optimistic with the end date. Why presenting a 20-year-old thing, and why introducing a 20-year-old thing, you might ask, and that'd be a good question. The reason is twofold. First of all, is to encourage people to use the data. According to my very nice sources, we have over 3,000 citations in various academic publications, but we think we can do better, and it can be more widespread, both among academics, but also beyond that, be it students, civil society, everyone. I think this is good data, solid, and all of the countries involved, and we want them to use it. And another one, what you might have guessed by my name, I am not from the region, is to also try to spread this out beyond the Caucasus. I had personally never heard of CB before coming to work for CRRC, which is a bit of a shame because I'm interested in that kind of data. And finally, there's a bit of a selfish reason to this, which is that as anyone who has run something for more than 20 minutes knows, you forget why you do things and why a given decision was made, and it helped us dig into the documentation again and sort of figure out why certain decisions were made and how they affect the data. So we use two ways to write this paper, which is, I should say at this point, an ongoing work. Internal documents, public documents, a lot of it actually you could find yourselves in the various websites. Actually, the public ones tend to be clearer than the internal ones, I have to say. And also interviews with various members of CRC staffs that have been involved either in the early days or who are still involved and have been for a while to sort of try to put in perspective this information that we have and why those decisions were made. And some of you might have noticed I set out a scope at the beginning, which is 2013. And the reason for that is not that the data before that is bad, it's just that there has been changes in the methodology and there has been changes in the questionnaires. And we're trying to make a paper as simple as possible that gives us as much as possible. And we don't want to explain 15 different methodologies, although they haven't changed that much. It's just, if you had a lot of little changes, it becomes a lot to explain. And at this point, I would also like to say that we reserve the right to extend that a little bit. I'm guessing this might end up somewhere around 2010. But 2013 has been, I think, the most stable so far. The periodicity has changed, has not changed since that wave. And there's been no significant change at all to the methodology. I will briefly glance over the methodology just to not bore you too much, but representative survey, we use electoral precincts as a sampling frame with a probability proportional to size to select settlements. It's a bit more complicated than that, and it will be in the paper, but for the sake of conciseness, I won't go into it now. Random walk, quiche tables. It's all pretty standard, nothing very exciting there. What's exciting is what's in there and what we can do with it, I think. You have two main parts of a CB wave. You have this regional questionnaire, which some people also call a core questionnaire, which comes over again and again, and which is common to Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan when it did run. And this is very good to measure long-term things, to measure values, to measure things that don't change that fast, and that we presumably want to measure for a long time. But it's not very good to measure political shifts, wars, revolutions. So you also have country wave specific questions in there, which help being a bit snappier, I would say. And how do we get to that before I go further into the content? You develop that regional questionnaire, just so you have everyone has an idea. You develop the country wave questions. You pilot it, of course. I mean, if you know how to run the survey, you know all of this, you know what's coming, basically. You revise it, you calculate the sample, you make sure everything is nice and tight. And then we do interview training, we collect the data, we make sure it's good. That's also, I think, a very important part of CB is that we know there is like, okay, I've only put one sort of quality control thing there, but we make sure the data is quite tight. We clean the data and then we disseminate, which is what we are doing here. But one of the things I think I really like about Barometer data in general, and this is true of CB, this is true of your Barometer and a bunch of other regional barometers that I won't list, you have a lot of topics. You have trust towards institutions, you have politics, democracy, you have values, social connections, perception of foreign affairs, which is my favorite because I'm a conflict guy, and media and internet. And like I just took some of the big ones, but by no means it is limited to this. And I think this allows to answer a really wide range of research questions, even if you're so inclined as to mix them with other data sets, which is always a fun thing to do in and of itself. And it also varies in terms of types of questions, which I think is something that we don't think about very often. You have those attitudinal questions measuring specific or not so specific, depending on the question attitudes of people. You have behavioral questions. You can sort of try to measure from A to Z, some kind of process. You have also environmental questions, which help us qualify those questions. And all of this taken together, again, allows you to do a lot of research. And that's why we want to disseminate it further. And I'm a quantitative analyst, so I had to make a plot shortly. And basically, the main thing I want to get out of this plot is to show that it's quite stable. I took sample size as a token or proxy for methodology, apart from a COVID-induced dip in 2021. It's pretty stable. The number of variables only grows. I doubt it will grow a lot more because otherwise we'll need 2 days to administer the survey, but 700 variables, it's pretty good. You can do a little bit with that. And one of my favorite one is the variables that are present since 2013, and that is present in every single wave. So you have even more if we skip, maybe they've been skipped in 2015, say. And you have about 200 of those variables, and again, on this wide range of topics. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. We'll continue working on this paper. So if you have any questions, feedback, we'll welcome that. And thank you.
Thank you so much to review the instrument or survey that is very familiar for us and interesting for us. Now all of you, all the presenters and participants, Zoom audience, maybe a Zoom audience and in the audience in this room are the same besides our guests from Azerbaijan. So we can open up the Q&A session, and we have up to 20 minutes for Q&A sessions. So all of you are welcome to share your questions or comments about the presentations. Let's start the first question from the audience. I mean the room audience, another from the Zoom audience, and subsequently answer the questions. So you're welcome to start.
Turn this off.
I have several questions though. Do I spill them out, all of them, or?
All the questions you have, and everybody gets the role for the questions.
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, what a great start of the day. It's very, very interesting topics that I've heard about. I have two questions for you. I was wondering if maybe I didn't see it well, but was there any information about levels of confidence in politics defined by age, especially the young people?
This is really hard to do because these datasets they go into the test, so it is really hard to look at specific ages, unfortunately. So that sorry. Yeah. So no, should I answer right away or yes? Okay.
It's better.
Okay. Yes. So at this point we didn't do this, but yes, it would be interesting to see how that works.
So I had a follow-up question, but maybe it's the same answer. I was also wondering, and is there any information about levels of their response towards political participation in forms of attending peaceful processes?
No, this is the what we see there. It is such a high. Do you remember it said, I would never be part of any demonstration, and it's like 80.8% of people who generally, if you look at the political action, because the political confidence in politics is quite low, you see that they have not participated, and there is a very small number of people who participated in strikes or peaceful demonstrations or whatever forms of political action, but mostly you see that I would never do it.
Yeah.
So that's the
Defined by
trend that
age.
you see. No, defined
also
not by the
okay.
not by the age. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And other questions with another presenter?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's okay. I had a question for Ulkar.
Yeah.
If I pronounce your name.
Yes.
I was wondering, in your very broad research that is still going on, do you also, or are you planning to take into account the role of local media on Azerbaijani identity formation?
So your question, like local media formation, identity?
Yeah, local and national media. Yeah.
Yes, but the media in Azerbaijan is not that like democratic and so on. Yeah, I will consider it. This is a good question and good recommendation. I can say that. So, but I think that it has mostly negative influence rather than the positive one. So there are lots of factors why it is so. So they are not free. There is no free media. So again, it doesn't have a big impact in a formation of identity, I can say. But the research to research it or to have some interviews with some media organizations, if I don't even sure that if it will be possible, so would be good.
Okay, and one last question.
Yeah, please.
You also mentioned in the beginning something about the role of CSOs, civil society organizations, or NGOs. You might have called.
Yeah, because I would also like to add in the further research the role of NGOs, yes, in the formation of the process, but till 2013, because after 2013 or 2014 we don't have that they are influenced that much, but like during this period from the 2000 and 2013, yeah, I'm going to investigate the role of NGOs, but not last 10 years or 15 years.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. I'm ready to give the microphone to everybody who is interested to ask the questions. So you're welcome. Yeah, just a moment. Yeah, good.
Thank you. My questions, thank you for your presentation. My question is related to the political psychology. You showed us Georgian perceptions towards European values and Georgian values. My question is, was that open question? Because I saw that the answers were very different.
Yes, it was an Yes, it was an open question.
Oh.
It was the question that you got there and how they perceived what was, and it said that they had to name just one thing that came to mind. So that's why you get this difference.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. I have a question for, I think I apologize.
It's a little bit problematic,
That's,
but maybe
yeah,
quite.
I'll hopefully my voice will carry.
Yeah.
I have a question for each of the projects, so I'm happy to take them after or answer in kind, but I'll start from reverse order. So Louis-Alassane. Yeah. Thanks so much for the paper. As somebody who's done some surveys over time, I both understand and appreciate the work that goes into both you and prior generations of keeping a project like this going, make it consistent. It's incredibly difficult and make it usable for others, which is, I have to commend you. I've used the data, students have used the data. So it's really great. One of the things I'm curious about, if you could talk a little bit about how missingness and incompletes, et cetera, have changed over time. Because I know in the American literature, there's this problem where we can't get people to answer surveys or phones anymore. And so what does it mean? Is this representative at all? How has this changed in Armenia, Georgia, et cetera? And what are you all doing to take that into account?
Okay. I'm going to have a very bad answer to that.
That's okay.
Because I actually haven't taken part in any waves of CP.
Okay.
So I'm going to go off the anecdotes I have. What I can tell, at least about Armenia, is I think getting to do face-to-face surveys is getting increasingly difficult.
Yeah.
Research fatigue is rising.
Yeah.
So it is getting more difficult. But I also have heard, and I don't know to what extent those two things contradict each other, that people quite enjoy answering CV. That it's quite fun to answer that kind of survey, and because it is so broad-ranging. Sorry. So I'm not sure. I think I've looked briefly at the fieldwork dates. They haven't gotten much longer, which we can't say about every project we do. And yeah, I think that's about it. But that's a good point. I think we will consider this. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and just to add, no need for response, but also how the share of do not knows is changing or not changing. Because in a couple cases, I use some CV data and could find correlations with don't know and certain answers. So it's interesting to think about that.
I think it really depends on questions.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. It's some questions I think are the most interesting thing to interpret is the don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's valuable dependent variable.
Yeah, it works, and people sometimes exclude it, and there's a lot to say about that. But no, I think it's mostly question dependent. I don't think there's any big trend in the survey itself.
For Ulkar, can you hear me? Ulkar, can you hear me? You can.
Yes.
Great. I'm going to speak towards the mic, not towards the screen. The one thing I thought about in your presentation was about some of the work. Tim Blauvelt has a paper on this with a co-author, and then David Layton's Identity Information uses these matched guise experiments, which are specifically built to try to get at how people think about what languages they want to use and the hierarchy of those languages. So I just thought you have an interesting case where there might be strategic reasons why people are answering these questions attitudinally about what language they think they want to use and which ones they want people to speak. But using some of the strategies that have been done in some of these papers in the former Soviet Union might be really interesting to at least think about some of the implications of what those papers find in the South Caucasus and other areas. And also see if it's something that you could potentially replicate, which would be really interesting to add to that literature. So just a suggestion.
Thank you very much for your suggestions. I would like to ask if it's possible, can you add the name of the authors or papers in the comments?
That or I will find your email and I will email them to you.
Thank you so much for recommendations and suggestions.
For Elena, one of the things that I came away from your presentation that was very just a realization was that the idea of EU integration is really a policy and institutional act, right? Getting into the EU or signing of laws and things. Yes. But in reality, what you're getting at is what many European countries are actually concerned about. They're not as concerned about the policies. They're concerned about these underlying features, which is so fascinating to think about. And I think sometimes my perception of Georgia is that they are sometimes more willing to do the policy reform pieces. But the concern is that there's this underlying cultural difference. And so I would urge you to maybe do a little comparative work too, to present what does it look like in Poland, in Hungary, in Romania, and Bulgaria, because it'd be really fascinating to show how close those are. I was trying to remember where they were on the map, but even shedding some light, focusing on that will really get us to the heart of this problem.
I was actually thinking of doing that,
cool.
But you know what, this survey and the data do not bring context with it. So then I would have had to elaborate on context, because I tried to do that with South Caucasus, and then when you see when you know your area and you see, for example, how NGOs, for example, in Azerbaijan work, and then you compare these numbers that you get or the percentages that you get, they do not say anything, because you know what the context brings with it. So this is one of that's why when I'm using this world values survey, if I do not do my own research with it, then it is really hard to compare. And that's why I avoided and I focused on Georgia this time. But this is very interesting, and I want to use this data and also maybe do my own research which I can then really bring it with the context. But thank you for
I think
that.
it's a very good response, and it's a very responsible response. The one thing I would say though is that the rest of Western Europeans are not doing that. They're absolutely not taking the context into account. So I think you have a little bit of cover in saying, I'm just going to look at the data because that's what the equivalent of the French public or the Dutch public are doing anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not so far afield, but I appreciate a very careful response on this. And then finally, for the last paper, I was curious, are there, could you talk a little bit more about the regional variation, location? There's some interesting papers I've seen in Georgia, and I've done some work on where people are in the country and how likely they were to actually experience violence and how that changed survey responses. So the sense that if you were closer to an area where there was actual conflict, your responses change in systematic ways. Do you have a sense of, are there IDPs that are in the survey and how they respond or do or don't respond differently? And then the final piece is just post-COVID, is there something about everyone's mentality is just different? So even a war is hard to move the needle on this. So.
Thank you very much for the questions. Regarding the answers, the responses that we got, actually we were trying to measure and understand what were responses coming from regions that are closer to the conflict zone. However, unfortunately, we couldn't derive it from our research, from World Value Survey research, because it was not kind of representative and the sample sizes were so small that we couldn't understand how people coming from regions directly being affected by the war would respond to that questions. So unfortunately, we couldn't manage to do it, but thanks for your question, because we really were thinking about it. We're thinking to somehow measure how those people actually would answer to those questions, because we do have the assumption that definitely there would be some differences in the answers. We have some other studies that we are conducting. Unfortunately, some of them are not that regional representative in order to compare with the results that we got. But it's something very interesting, and we thought maybe we can do it with through qualitative studies, just to understand how those will be different in the answers. And the second part of your question referred to
internally displaced people. Are they in the sample, and maybe they're the proxy, they've left the area that's under conflict?
Yes, because this was a World Value Survey, I guess it was nationwide representative, and we couldn't identify those people as well. However, for future considerations, it's good point just to have some comparison studies with internally displaced people and the citizens living way far from war-affected regions. So thanks for your question and comments. We will take this into consideration for further research.
If I can jump in just there, because I also participated in that paper. I think, I don't know if maybe COVID changed. I hadn't thought about this, but my intuition is that it's just the time length of this conflict. Because I mean, at first I was super surprised by the results. I did not see them coming at all. I was expecting the opposite results. And I think there is a common trend a little bit with your work as well, of like how much economic variables matter way more than even a war, which is super surprising. But I guess it's not.
Yeah, it's also interesting when you look at other theories. For example, this collective theory, collective trauma, which states that after wars, after COVID, after these kind of traumas, on the contrary, people become closer to their environments. They become closer to their, as our data shows, to their personal income, to their community question, to their community connectedness. It's a way for them to forget what's going on in bigger reality. And it's very interesting topic to research, to understand psychologically how it is so in reality. So I think here we need a qualitative research to go further, but a lot of theories just state that, well, it's okay. We were looking for quite the contrary of the results to see that, yeah, people's life change after it, but no, people tend to believe that this is small community of there and they want to live there just to forget what's happened like days ago, because it's trauma that they cannot overcome. It's very difficult for them. And to the COVID question, because war happened right after COVID, we had the results from this association, Psychology Association of Armenia, and their studies also showed that COVID immensely impacted people's psychology, and we already had higher numbers, traumatic numbers in the society, and then the war came, and that's why the numbers become even higher. So it definitely had its impact on society as well. Thanks.
Any questions?
Yeah, I think if there are no questions, I have 2 questions for the other participants. Louis' paper I know, so no questions to him. But I have a question to Elena. It's very interesting just to know, you mentioned that there is shift from materialist to post-materialist values in Georgia, and you somehow connected it with war and with conflicts. Or if I'm not mistaken, if I'm mistaken, just please elaborate more on that part, how you would explain this shift in Georgian society.
Forgetting this red button. No, I don't think that I have connected it with war or conflict. Yes, but this shift is taking place. Like if you remember when we saw these indexes from materialist to post-materialist, and also the autonomy index, which is also very important because autonomy index deals with child socialization and how enculturalized the child is. And when you look at those indexes, you see how this from obedience it changes to self-expression, and how from like economic needs it changes to like different values that are in the higher hierarchy of Maslow's pyramid. So this is exactly what this shows. But the most important thing there is this big number of mixed indexes, where you see this process that has begun, but then you see that there are some of the challenges on philosophical beliefs and in instrumental beliefs. I mean, people understand what is right, but people cannot find tools to make it right. So that's what you actually see there. And this is not only in politics. I have taken out like the main confidences. But for example, when the people are asked, do you value competition, for example, and they say yes, we value competition, but then they also say that the government should be trying to help those who cannot, who are not able to be like the competitive in this process. Or they say, and there is quite a high number of people saying this, and then suddenly they would say that, you know, hard work, for example, works, but not in all circumstances, right? So you see that people know what is right, where they are heading, but it is really hard to find the tools and mechanisms to put this to make this right. And you see this like through all the variables you can like take from the World Values Survey.
Maybe this values is not transferred to very concrete norms yet, because this is transition process.
Exactly. And then this confidence in politics, like in confidence that the system doesn't work exactly the right way that it should be working, is also a a big factor, and you can see this throughout all the attitudes that you can take from the World Values Survey.
Thank you. And my last question for Ulkar. I just wonder, you were speaking about the decline in Russian language in Azerbaijan, and also mentioned some interesting facts about general overall usage of languages in the country. And it's very interesting for me just to know what data you use, and whether those data are administrative data or something that has been done by research institutions, or I don't know from where you take this data. Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, the data is taken from Topchubashev Research Center. It's a think tank, Topchubashev think tank in Azerbaijan. They made some research regarding this, and I took the data also from some surveys and data from research. 1 second. Research institutes. 1 second. Let me give you the research. Oh, sorry. I will give it. Yeah, Baku Research Institute. Baku Research Institute. You can find its website and Facebook. So these are mainly to Agora Azerbaijan, Baku Research Institute, and Topchubashev Research Center, which is also a think tank. So mostly from there, but for further deep research, I would like to take some interviews and surveys with more sampling, and with population more sampling. So these three sources that are mostly that I use in my paper, in my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
This is Elene. You mentioned generational change as a factor for those varying values. What's your understanding of, is it only generational change? Does individual change happen? And how does that affect the speed at which it changes, if that's not too much? I'm sorry. I'm trying to be an optimist.
That was too much. But yes, yes, this generation, I mean, this should be studied actually, to tell you the truth, because we don't know at what speed it is taking. And that's why I mentioned that the trigger was really this March protests, where you could see these young people who are hitting the streets because, and when you ask them, why are you standing here? And they are saying that I want to defend my values. And so this change is happening. You can see it, but at what speed, it is really an important question. And also maybe the answer could be in your questions as well. Maybe if we are able to see how what is young generation's confidence in politics, and whether they are the smallest part who say that, you know, I wouldn't do any political action. That would also give us some indication of how these values are changing. But this is really interesting, that the whole that in the World Values Survey, there's this question: do you think that old generation is impeding this process of changing? And there is a very big yes on that in World Values Survey, even without filtering it out for the young people. So yes, and what the paper suggests also that I showed you, that just very few papers from the political psychological point of view on these types of values that I showed you. Right, even in 1997, it shows that this post-communist or communist legacy is something that is certainly impeding this diagonal move of the country. So if I answered your question.
Thank you so much for all of the presenters, for your interesting presentations, and participants, and Ulkar, who is decently connected with us, for your actively participations in Q&A sessions.
Thank you.
Usually I ask you for the microphone and I missed it. So thank you. It was very interesting session to get very interesting notes about the trends of values in South Caucasus. So now you can enjoy with our lunch and then join another session, B2 session after the lunch. Thank you again.